Alright guys, how you doing? Spear here. Hope everyone's really good. So hopefully by this point you will have seen the short introduction video I did regarding Strymon. Just to recap, I'm a huge fan of Strymon. I love their gear, found out about them a couple of years ago, and I've managed to acquire a few of the pedals. So I use the timeline for my delays, I use the Mobius for all my effects and modulation, and I've recently just acquired the BigSky, which is the latest pedal of the multi-effects range they do that's just come out, and it's insane. So the next series of videos I'm bringing out basically a part-by-part review of each reverb machine featured in the BigSky. Just to give you guys an idea of how powerful this pedal is, it features analog circuitry. It's also got an insanely powerful shark processor in it, and it's just designed with all the best components you can get, from everything from the pots, the pedals, the actual foot switches, and the aluminium used to create the chassis. Really incredible. So you'll probably find that the BigSky is far superior to most of the reverb rack gear that you can buy, just because of the amount of time and effort that's gone into making the pedal. Strymon have actually researched 50 years worth of reverb technology just to make sure that they've got the best quality reverb patches for this pedal, and they nailed it down to 12, so that's really cool. So in this short video, what I want to do is just go over the controls of the pedal. So when I go into each reverb machine, we don't have to keep touching back on how I'm editing it, how I'm moving between patches, and so on and so forth. So this video is just a really quick overview of how to change the patches, save patches, and move up and down the banks in the pedal. Of course, you can control this by MIDI if you have a MIDI controller or a gig rig or something like that, but what I'm using at the minute is straight effects loop in and out, and I just use the pedal itself to control it. Because I'm a bit more traditional in that sense, and I haven't quite delved into the world of MIDI yet. Anyway, if we move across to the close-up cam, I'll show you some of the features. So, starting from the bottom of the pedal, we have 3 stomp switches, and the general layout is exactly the same as the timeline and the Mobius. The only small difference is that this foot switch here, on the BigSky, is a 3rd reverb on the bank, whereas on the timeline and the Mobius this would have been a tap tempo. So it's really cool because we have 3 different reverbs per bank, meaning that there's essentially 300 because we have 100 banks. So that's really cool. Anyway, like I said, we've got A, B and C. Now if I wanted to move up a bank, I'd hit B and C, and then we go to bank 1, and to go back down I'd hit A and B, back to 0. So at the minute we're on A, bank 0, which would be the first reverb machine, which is room, which is highlighted here with the green LED. So this knob here allows us to move through the banks, as you can see by the green LED, but if we click it, it shows us the value of a specific parameter, which is the decay parameter. As you can see, if I'm moving the decay knob up and down, you can see it's showing us the value there. Now, also, what's useful about this particular button is if I want to save a bank, so if I've edited it using all this, I would click and hold this, and it would give me the option to save. Now to save it, all I have to do is hit that button and it's saved, and there you go. So it's very simple and very easy to control. So that's what this particular button does. Now we move across to the value knob. This is a really important control because it allows us to go into the parameters of the particular patch that we're on. So if I push down, what we're going to get is we're going to get parameter. Now we can scroll through, as you can see, low end. Now to go into each parameter, we just click again, and it gives us the minus and plus, so we can adjust the low end of the sound, and then click to exit, and then we scroll along. Size, so we have studio. On this particular reverb machine we have 2 different style rooms. We've got a studio and we've got a club, and you just scroll between them like that. Now if we move along, we have diffusion, which is again, it's on a setting here, and we carry on. Boost, now boost allows us to go plus 3 decibels or minus 3 decibels. At the minute it's at unity. I'm going to leave that as it is. but that's a very useful tool because depending on your patch, you might want certain sounds louder than others, and that's really good to be able to use that feature. Now if we move along to the next one, this is called Persist. Persist basically turns on reverb trails. So what I'll basically do is it will spill over when the effect is bypassed. So if I turn it off, you'll hear the reverb still spill over into the bypass mode. That's actually quite useful, but again, if I go in, I can turn that on or off. I'm going to leave that on actually because I quite like the idea of that. Next we have Hold. Now what that is a new feature for the BigSky, and basically if I was to hold any one of these switches on, depending on what reverb bank I'm on, I can go in and I can either have freeze or infinite. And what that basically does is it allows for sustain. Okay, so if I was to hold down the pedal on and if I was on infinite, it would just give me infinite sustain, and I could just have that as a drone, for instance, and play over the top of it. Whereas if I was to select freeze, it would freeze the sustain, it would carry it on, but then I could add new notes to that sustain and create like a sustain chord, which is really, really sick. So that's a really cool feature. Next is name. So you would go in and I could just, go in and change the name, but I'm not gonna do that. Where's the S? Oh, there you go. And then we have expression pedal, and then we have expression pedal set. So expression pedal on or off. I don't have one plugged in. Next is set, so it would start at the heel or the toe, which is really useful. And that's it. So that is the parameter switch, and that's a very, very useful switch. Now, if I was just to push it, that would allow me to do just the parameters of the specific bank. However, if I hold it, it allows me to do the global settings of the pedal. So that's things like bypass, is it true bypass or is it buffered? MIDI, this is how we do all our MIDI programming. I don't actually have any MIDI in, so I'm not going to go into that. Moving across, we have dry signal. Basically, normal would be a standard normal dry signal, but if I select kill, that would basically, the dry signal is muted, allowing the mix control to be used as an effect level, which is quite a good feature, but we'll keep that on normal for now. Spillover allows the effect to spill over into the next bank depending on what you're doing, and then basically, so you can turn that on or off, so that's useful. Names, again, you choose whether your name is on, scroll, so what that would mean is basically you can either have the number or you can have the name of the bank. So it would say, for instance, if the name of the bank was like Massive Hall, it would show you the first 6 digits were like massive. But if you wanted just the number of the bank, it would give you that instead, and you can choose that. And then lastly, preset dump, which it's another MIDI thing. Basically, it allows presets to be sent via MIDI to another BigSky or to a MIDI recorder device. Presets can be dumped individually or all at one time. So basically that's another techie MIDI thing. Anyway, that is the whole of the volume knob, and it's really intense and it does a lot. So basically that's how you control most of the stuff on this pedal. So that's great. Now if I go back to just the standard display, we'll move across to the individual controls. Now what's really cool about this pedal is, for instance, now looking over the rest of the knobs on here, as you can see, we've got decay, pre-delay, mix, tone, parameter 1, parameter 2 and modulation. Most of these you can change in the parameter control knob here, and you can do all that stuff here, but to be fair, it's a lot easier when you just control it on here, because for instance, say I want to use parameter 1 would just quickly adjust the low end, parameter 2 would adjust the size of the room, so it's either a club or a studio. Tone is a high cut shelf thing, so if I push that on full, we're going to have all the high end in the reverb trail. If I pull it off, it's like a high shelf basically, so that's quite cool. And modulation is a feature that they put on the timeline and the Mobius as well, which is just generally, it sounds like just kind of a whirring kind of tape effect, which is quite sweet, so I like that. Mix is just the amount of reverb you want dialed in to the patch, so obviously that's all the way off. Now if I go up to about here, that's full reverb, full dry signal, and if I exceed that, what it does is it starts to put the reverb louder than the dry signal. which is quite cool because that could be used as a sort of distant ambient sort of sound. So obviously if I set that like that and then save the patch, it will be like that standard. So anyway, I'm going to leave that about there. Pre-delay acts like, I suppose a good way to explain it is like if your amplifier is facing a wall and this moving up is moving the wall further away from the amp so that it takes the sound longer to reach and come back. That's essentially what that does. And I think on full it's a good like 2 seconds before you hear the slap back, if that's a good way to explain it, but you'll see what I mean in a moment. And decay is self-explanatory, and you can see here that it goes up to a whopping 20 seconds of decay, which is incredible because it sounds beautiful. Any one of these reverbs on full delay is literally like you're floating through utopia, so that's really, really sweet. Hopefully that was a useful overview of how we just edit stuff in the pedal. Because what I want to do when I go into each reverb machine is just sort of focus on the sound, play with it so you can hear what it does, and you know, that's what I want to focus on, the quality of the sound. So for anyone that's curious about using the pedal to edit patches and that kind of thing, please refer to this video and there'll be a link in all the other demonstrations of the BigSky. But anyway, hope that was useful and I'll see you in the next video.